This news out just recently is very interesting, and it's something, a repercussion of the things that have been happening in the EV market that probably most of us didn't foresee happening. And basically, what it's saying is that because of what's been happening to EVs and EV depreciation, this could potentially increase the cost of financing all cars. What? I'll explain right after this. A brown car guy. Brown car guy. Right, so this is fascinating. This is something that hadn't occurred to me, but actually it makes total sense. So what's happening is that so the way that finance companies work, especially things like PCPs, is they have an agreed value at the end of the car's life. So at the end of the financial contract's life. So 3 years or 5 years, and they work out the values. Of course, what happened last year is that there was a massive price war with EVs. So Tesla price slashed up to the tune of nearly $10,000 in some markets and some models. Other manufacturers had to follow suit. A lot of manufacturers had to take big losses. Prices of EVs came down considerably, not enough to make them affordable. They're still very expensive, but you know what I mean, compared to what they were. That, of course, then actually has a knockdown effect on used prices. So used prices also then took a bit of a battering. This is why used EVs right now are particularly attractive to buy, and a lot of people are getting into them. But it has had a massive, the fact that EVs were already depreciating quite a bit, this then actually made it worse. And now with the latest concerns over a lot of, things out there that people are not wanting to buy EVs and stuff like that. So EVs are seeing quite heavy depreciation. What is happening is that this depreciation, of course, is considerably more than was anticipated by the finance companies when they wrote out those contracts. But of course, those contracts are agreed terms, so they have to keep to the price that they set at the time, which means that they actually end up then taking a big loss. So what is happening is that to recover that loss, they then have to increase their costs. So this is a story from Reuters, a news agency. Low resale values for electric cars have pushed the leasing firms that drive Europe's auto markets to double prices over the last 3 years, and some are threatening to quit the business altogether if regulators force them to go electric too fast, according to industry executives. The jump in prices for electric car leases comes as cuts in subsidies for new EVs in key markets such as Germany are hitting sales and risk stalling Europe's electric transition just when Brussels wants to step on the accelerator, the executive said. Now remember, in Britain, most of the subsidies have gone away. We don't have any. And also the only thing we have is the BIK, benefit in kind taxation, which is based on the emissions of the vehicle. And so there's a big advantage. But also, having said that, we are about to hit electric vehicles with road tax, VED. So that's about to happen, and even things like congestion charging, free congestion charging will disappear just after Christmas next year in London, for example. So EVs are about to be hit with additional costs, and again, some of the incentives that were there before for buying an EV are going to be wiped away. Continuing with this story, this is a quote from Tim Albertson, CEO of Ayvens, one of Europe's largest auto leasing firms. And he said, if we are pushed very, very hard that everything has to be electric too soon, my shareholders will say, we don't want to take the risk and we'd be out of the market. Let's be honest, without us, who will take the risk? This is what he says. So Ayvens is majority owned by French bank Société Générale. Has a fleet of 3.4 million cars. Wowzers. That's the sort of cars that they're financing out there. 10% of those are EVs. 10% of those are EVs. Leasing companies play a pivotal role in Europe as 60% of new cars of all fuel types are always leased. So petrol, diesel, everything, 60% of cars, and we can see that also here. Most people that buy new cars are buying them on leases and PCPs and stuff like that. When it comes to EVs, it's actually even higher. With EVs, because remember, a lot of EVs, especially here in the UK, for example, a lot of people are buying them on fleet and company, so they're all being leased that way. The proportion is as high as 80%. According to data provided to Reuters by Dataforce, in the 16 European markets where it can identify fleet registrations, including Germany, Britain, France, Spain, 60% of new EVs go to corporate fleets and commercial buyers. Experts say those buyers almost exclusively use leases, and about half of the remaining sales to private buyers are also leases. So fleets are using leases, private buyers are also using leases predominantly when it comes to EVs. It makes perfect sense. You buy an EV, you have an agreed value, so you know what you're going to do. Trouble is that for the finance company, they're like, whoa, and also those agreed values now are definitely not going to be as high as they were a few years ago. In markets with no EV subsidies, the dominance of corporate is even more pronounced, such as in Britain and in Belgium. That's what it says, and that's which corroborates what I've just said. Individuals there accounted for just 23% in Britain and just 8% in Belgium for new European purchases. So this is only 23% of private buyers in Britain and only 8% of private buyers in Belgium. Sorry to interrupt. Are you enjoying the video? Well, make sure you've punched the like button. It helps. The price of a lease is designed to account for the depreciation of a vehicle over the typical 3-year lease period based on estimated resale prices or residual values. But if second-hand prices end up being lower than anticipated when the lease ends, leasing firms take a financial hit when they get the vehicle back. For various reasons, from Tesla's price, this is reiterating what I've already said, from Tesla's price cuts to concerns about charging infrastructure and battery life to the influx of affordable Chinese EVs, second-hand electric car prices have been sliding in Europe ever since they hit the peak in October 2022. According to figures provided to Reuters by data firm Automotive, resale values for EVs in Germany in early July were 24% below pre-pandemic levels and 30% lower in Britain. The resale values for EVs were 30% lower in Britain compared to pre-pandemic. This is in stark contrast to second-hand petrol models, which remained about 15% more expensive in both markets. And this we know that from other reports and stuff that we've seen. People have been more accepting of used EVs because they're cheap, but they've got to be cheap, says Gary Cambridge. He's a partner at car dealer Cambridge Motors in London. If they're expensive, people don't want them. That makes perfect sense. So, leasing companies approached by Reuters declined to give specific details about any losses on EV contracts from the slump in residual values. Signs of electric pain have shown up in disclosures by some rental companies. And it's quite interesting because we had that conversation recently that I recorded with the guy from MG. And he mentioned how, rental companies was completely moving away from EVs because their customers just didn't want them. Hertz has reported write-downs of about $150 million, so this is basically loss, for the roughly 20,000 EVs it has been selling off at greatly reduced prices. Sixt, another rental company, said lower residual values for EV cut its 2023 earnings by 40 million euros or $44 million. Wowzers. Gosh. Bart Beckers, deputy CEO at Arval, a leasing company owned by French-backed BNP Paribas, they said the losses from low EV sales were currently limited in number given EVs are only a small portion of their overall portfolio. But he says, but the amounts are not insignificant, he told Reuters. Like other leaders in the market, Arval has been forced already to increase prices because of lower residual values. They made up about 10% of their fleet of 1.7 million vehicles. Some automakers have provided cash compensation to leasing companies for slumping EV values, apparently. Reuters reported that in May, Tesla had offered discounts and other ways to mitigate losses to leasing companies, including our brands, though they apparently declined to say what they were exactly. So that's quite interesting. So this is how car companies, EV companies are sort of fighting back. In Germany, Europe's biggest car market, data provided to Reuters by German think tank Car Center Automotive Research show that EV leases have jumped in the last 3 years. So there are more people getting into them. In August 2021, a lease for €45,000 EV costs €284 per month, well below the €473 for an equivalent fossil fuel model. because it kind of makes sense then, doesn't it? Now the cost for EV has more than doubled to 621 euros, while the fossil fuel car has actually fallen to 468. So a very slight fall there from 473 to 468, but a massive jump there from 284 to 621 euros per month. German EV sales, unsurprisingly, then fell 16.4% in the first half of 2024 after the government abruptly axed subsidies for consumers in December, and that decline has hit overall the EU trend, in the trend of EV sales in the EU. Sales of fully electric vehicles in the EU rose to 14.6% of new car sales in 2023. That was up from 6.1 in 2020, so within the 3 years, but they have now slipped back, so from 14.6 by 0.2% to 14.4 in the first half of this year, as EV sales rose only by a tepid 1.3%. Anyway, it goes on and on and on, but the long and short of it is that your finance deals could end up being more expensive because of the slumping residuals in EVs. Where is it going to go? Well, I think it's going to steady itself, to be honest, personally, because I think finance companies have got probably a better handle on things than the rest of us because they're dealing with money, and they don't want to lose money, especially not to the tune of that many millions. So I think that what they're going to do is they're just basically going to reduce the end of contract term on that car. Now, that's not necessarily good for the consumer. And again, what will happen is that your monthly payments will go up because of the greater margin between the new price and the return price. So that's not necessarily good news, and it's not really designed to encourage people to get into them. Nothing really can be done about the used values because that's just the nature of the market. I mean, there's no way that you can dictate that. I mean, in the past, car companies used to do things like buy back stock so as to try and control the value of cars in the market. But that's only going to have so much of an impact, and unless there's full-on used approved schemes, and people are definitely going back to the manufacturers to buy those cars from them, it wouldn't necessarily have an impact. I think it would have a slight impact, but not enough to mitigate what's been happening. So the used car values you can't really do too much about. So what then you end up with is a situation where, okay, then the only thing that you can control is the new prices, and then those new prices will then actually, funnily enough, will have to come down even further. Will that still have a knock-on effect on used prices? I don't know, because if the used values are still likely to be volatile based on what's happening with new car prices, then yeah, that could actually put further pressure on used values of those cars. But if they've reached a sort of plateau where they've sort of kind of settled, then there's less likelihood that they're going to be impacted by reductions in new prices, which have already been coming down anyway. Fascinating stuff, to be honest. I don't think anybody really has the answers, but it'll be interesting to see how this goes forward, and I'll keep an eye on this, and I will keep updating you as soon as I get more information. And I'd love to hear your comments as well on this below. Catch you all in the next video.
Yo, it's quantum race, tales from the future's face. 13 stories gonna take it to outer space. From Martian canyons deep to Dubai's high rise. Secret lives, AI drives to the man who flies. Pedal to the metal in a 325. Race through time, keeping hope alive. AI takeovers, more lines than blur. Get your engines ready, rev it up for sure. Quantum races, lessons at the finish line. Fast-paced fiction, it'll blow your mind. Tech and turn, more survivals to grind. Get lost in the pages, see what you find. Past predators hunt, tomorrow's man leads. Dystopian dreams where the future feeds. From India to the Middle East, stories collide. Uncharted roads in this epic ride. Jump in the driver's seat, feel the thrill. Spinning through the cosmos, choosing that chill. Worlds without real secrets to unfold. In quantum races, legends are told. Quantum races, lessons at the finish line. Fast-paced fiction, it'll blow your mind. Tech and turn, more survivals to grind. Get lost in the pages, see what you find.
Shout out time, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, if you enjoy my content, why not get involved? Buy me a coffee. You can do that at either of these links. Or if you're watching on YouTube, buy me a thanks or take out a membership. It all helps. It really does.